Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new Ninjago video here on the channel. My name is TannerFishies. In today's video, we are going to be discussing something that's not really great for Ninjago, and it involves the Garmadon solo comic and the lack of continuity that it shares with Ninjago Crystallized. One of the biggest mysteries for me when going into Ninjago Crystallized, especially part 2, was how the storyline would tie in with the Garmadon solo comic series. For those that don't know, Garmadon does indeed have a solo comic. There are currently 5 issues available right now. Would totally recommend reading them if you guys have not done so just yet. They are confirmed to be canon to the actual Ninjago story by multiple sources, but a lot of Ninjago fans, including myself, were kind of disappointed because when Ninjago Crystallized Part 2 finally came out and we met up with Garmadon again, the comic series wasn't really mentioned at all. In fact, the entire comic was just kind of ignored in favor of telling a different backstory for Garmadon. Many Ninjago fans were left confused then. Are these comics still canon after all? To a lot of people, no, they're not canon anymore, and a lot of people simply dismissed the Garmadon comic after Crystallized Part 2 came out because in their mind it wasn't canon anymore. And after reading the 5th and final issue of the Garmadon comic, I must confirm as well, there really isn't anything here tying it into Ninjago Crystallized. However, that doesn't mean it's not canon, and in today's video we are going to be discussing how these comics still can be canon to the actual show, and how this problem actually occurred. How is there this much disconnect between Ninjago stories that are canon in terms of the books, and in terms of the actual TV series? Now for starters, I believe that yes, the Garmadon comic still is canon. The Garmadon comic takes place immediately after March of the Oni, and it showcases Garmadon dealing with himself, his identity, and what exactly he is. The storyline focuses on himself eventually coming to terms with who he is, and finally figuring out what he wants in life, that of course being redemption. After the series concludes with issue number 5, Garmadon ventures outwards to parts unknown, and he goes off to find another adventure. In the Ninjago Crystallized version of Garmadon's backstory, Garmadon was simply living in Ninjago City this entire time, hanging out with Vinny from NGTV News, and the show kind of took a more comedic take on the character's backstory. Whilst in the Garmadon comic, the storyline was taken a lot more seriously, and it was given a lot more development. So essentially we have 2 different stories for Garmadon's backstory, but I don't think they conflict as much as people think they do. After thinking about it for a while, I believe the Garmadon story still is canon. The Garmadon comic is still canon to the actual Ninjago series, because the Garmadon comic could take place immediately after Ninjago March of the Oni, while the flashbacks that we saw in Ninjago Crystallized could take place at a later date. After Garmadon's comic adventure, he traveled to Ninjago City to learn more about himself, showing that there is room for Garmadon to grow. And of course, the Garmadon comic was the start to this adventure, which we would see play out more in Ninjago Crystallized. There's also been a suggestion throughout my comment section that maybe the Garmadon comic takes place after Ninjago Crystallized, but honestly, I don't really see that being the case. For one, there's a lot going on in the Garmadon comic that ties it directly to March of the Oni. And 2, Garmadon's powers in Ninjago Crystallized were much more advanced than what they were in the Garmadon comic, therefore only showing me that after time has passed, Garmadon's powers grew more and more, and obviously allowed him to do more crazy things, such as changing his physical appearance both in his default form and his Oni form. So in the context of the Ninjago timeline, the Garmadon solo comic takes place after March of the Oni, but before Ninjago Crystallized. And Ninjago Crystallized just picks up Garmadon's story a long time after the Garmadon comic left things off. It is still very much possible for the Garmadon comic to be canon, and in my mind it still is canon. Sure, Ninjago Crystallized kind of made things confusing for a lot of people, and it would make a lot more sense for Ninjago Crystallized to, actually acknowledge the comics, and in that sense I can understand why Ninjago fans see this disconnect, and eventually question the validity of the Garmadon comic, and whether or not it is canon. In terms of how this happened, honestly it's pretty easy to figure out why this occurred. The comic series and the TV series are obviously run by a couple of different people. Different teams, different people with different intentions. Both teams had the same goal, but obviously they didn't have a lot of connections with each other. There obviously wasn't a lot of overlay here, and I doubt there were many conversations going on between the 2 teams. I can't say for sure what exactly went on behind the scenes, but to me that would make a lot of sense, especially because the 2 storylines seem very disconnected, despite both of them obviously being canon. I have a feeling as well that Ninjago Crystallized had started production long before the Garmadon comic ever did, and like I said, with the amount of disconnect happening between the 2 teams, it's very likely that neither of them took inspiration from each other, and instead just took inspiration from the same source, that of course being Ninjago March of the Oni. So to summarize my thoughts in today's video, is the Garmadon comic still canon? I would like to think so. The only problem that I can see right now is that Ninjago Crystallized did not mention the Garmadon comic, nor did they mention any of the events that took place during said comic. In a perfect world, these 2 storylines would be connected even more, and obviously each of them would reference the other. I believe that would cause a lot less confusion within the Ninjago community, because right now I can understand why people are skeptical of the Garmadon comic being canon. At the end of the day, this isn't really great for Ninjago fans because it just causes a lot of confusion and causes a lot of, arguments in the community as well. People arguing back and forth whether or not the comic is canon, and of course you are free to think whatever you want to think, but I think for the most part Ninjago could have done a much better job at actually connecting these 2 stories and having it make a lot more sense for Ninjago fans. So with that being said guys, that'll pretty much wrap it up for my thoughts thoughts here. Be sure to leave a comment down below discussing what you think about the Garmadon comic and whether or not you think it's canon. Should there have been a greater connection between the show and the comics? Leave all your thoughts down below in the comments, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. And once again, be sure to check out the Garmadon comic if you have not done so just yet. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I will talk to you guys again really soon. Peace.